Hello and welcome to Stories for Sleepless Nights. I am Luna, and I am here to share tales of history, mythology, nature, biographies, philosophy, and many other topics, all designed to help you relax and fall asleep. Tonight, we will journey through one of the greatest stories ever told, Homer's epic poem, the Odyssey. This ancient tale is a foundational work of Western literature. It details the incredible 10-year journey of the hero Odysseus as he struggles to return home after the Trojan War. His story is one of perseverance, cunning, and the deep human longing for home. As we begin our journey, I invite you to settle into a comfortable position. Take a few deep breaths. Feel your body relax with each exhale. Gently close your eyes if you wish. Let your thoughts drift away as you listen. Allow the story to carry you into a peaceful rest. Our story truly begins at the triumphant end of the Trojan War. For 10 long years, the Greeks fought outside the mighty walls of Troy. It was Odysseus, a clever and wise king, who devised the plan of the Trojan horse. This giant wooden horse allowed Greek soldiers to sneak into the city, finally bringing the war to an end. With Troy fallen, Odysseus and his men, filled with thoughts of home, set sail across the wine-dark sea. Their journey, however, would prove to be far more difficult than the war itself. They soon faced their first challenge on the coast of the Sirens, a people allied with Troy. Odysseus's men, still eager for plunder after their victory, raided the city of Ismarus. They took what they could find and feasted on the shore. Odysseus urged them to leave quickly, knowing that staying would be dangerous. But his men, foolish in their victory, did not listen. They continued to eat and drink. As the sun rose the next morning, the Sirens, having gathered their neighbors, launched a fierce counterattack. They were many, and they fought with great skill. Odysseus and his men were forced to retreat to their ships, fighting desperately to escape. They lost many men that day, 6 brave sailors from each of Odysseus's 12 ships. It was a harsh reminder that the journey home would not be easy. After this terrible loss, a violent storm struck their fleet, pushing them off course for 9 days. They drifted across the sea, losing all sense of direction, until they finally landed on a strange new shore. This was the land of the Lotus Eaters. Odysseus sent a few of his men to explore, to learn what kind of people lived there. These friendly natives offered Odysseus's men a sweet fruit called the lotus. When the men ate it, a strange change came over them. They lost all memory of their homeland, of their families, and of their desire to return home. All they wanted to do was stay on that island, eating the lotus fruit forever. They forgot their purpose and their duties. Odysseus, worried when his scouts did not return, went to find them himself. He discovered them in a dreamy state, wanting nothing more than to remain. He knew he had to act quickly. With great effort, he dragged his unwilling men back to the ships, tying them down so they could not escape. He ordered the rest of his crew to set sail at once, before anyone else could taste the tempting, forgetful fruit. They left the land of the lotus eaters behind, continuing their long and dangerous journey toward home. After escaping the tempting island of the lotus eaters, Odysseus and his crew continued their journey. They sailed for many days across the wide sea. Soon they came upon a new land, an island with green fields where sheep and goats grazed freely. This was the land of the Cyclops. Odysseus, always curious, wanted to see what kind of people lived there. He took 12 of his best men and went ashore, bringing with him a skin of strong, sweet wine. They found a large cave, clearly a place where a shepherd lived. Inside, they saw huge baskets filled with cheese and pens holding lambs and kid goats. Odysseus's men wanted to take some food and leave quickly, but Odysseus insisted they wait, hoping to meet the cave's owner and receive a guest gift, as was the custom. This decision would prove to be a terrible mistake. Soon the owner of the cave returned. He was a truly monstrous sight, a giant with one large, round eye in the middle of his forehead. This was Polyphemus, a Cyclops. He drove his flocks of sheep and goats into the cave, then rolled a massive stone in front of the entrance, trapping Odysseus and his men inside. The stone was so heavy, 24 regular men could not have moved it. Polyphemus milked his sheep and goats. Then he spotted the hidden men. He spoke in a booming voice, asking who they were. Odysseus bravely explained that they were Greeks, blown off course, and asked for hospitality. But the Cyclops cared nothing for laws or gods. Instead, he reached out, grabbed two of Odysseus's men and dashed their heads against the ground. He then ate them, bone and flesh, like a wild beast. He ate them raw, washing them down with milk. The other men watched in horror, helpless. That night, Odysseus wished he could kill the giant, but he knew they would never be able to move the stone door. He had to think of a clever plan. The next morning, Polyphemus ate 2 more men for breakfast before rolling back the stone to let his flocks out. He then rolled the stone back into place, trapping the remaining men once more. Odysseus spent the day preparing his plan. He found a long, thick olive wood stake, about 6 feet long, and sharpened one end to a point. He hid it. When Polyphemus returned that evening, he ate 2 more men. Then Odysseus offered the giant the strong wine they had brought. Polyphemus drank it greedily, enjoying the taste. He asked Odysseus his name. Odysseus, thinking quickly, told the giant his name was Naaman. The wine made the Cyclops very sleepy. He soon fell into a deep, drunken slumber. This was Odysseus's chance. He and his men heated the sharpened stake in the fire until it glowed red. Then, with all their might, they drove the burning stake into the giant's single eye. Polyphemus screamed in agony, a terrible, loud cry that echoed through the cave. He ripped the stake from his eye, blind and enraged. Other Cyclops heard his shouts and came to the cave entrance, asking what was wrong. Polyphemus roared, "Naaman is killing me. Naaman is tricking me." Hearing, "Naaman is killing me," the other Cyclops thought he was fine and simply in pain, so they left him alone. The next morning, the blind Cyclops rolled away the stone to let his sheep out to graze. He stood at the entrance, feeling the back of each sheep as it passed, hoping to catch the men. But Odysseus had a brilliant idea. He tied his men to the undersides of the thick-fleeced sheep. He himself clung to the belly of the largest ram. As the sheep walked out, Polyphemus felt only wool, not men. They escaped the cave. Once they were safely outside, Odysseus and his men quickly ran to their ships, carrying the sheep. They pushed their ships into the water and began to row away. But as they pulled further from the shore, Odysseus, filled with pride and a terrible sense of victory, could not resist. He shouted back to the blinded monster, revealing his true name. "Cyclops, if anyone asks you who blinded you, tell them it was Odysseus, son of Laertes from Ithaca. This was a fatal mistake. The giant, hearing the real name of the man who had hurt him, let out a terrible cry. He remembered an old prophecy. He then called upon his powerful father, Poseidon, the mighty god of the sea. Poseidon ruled over all the oceans, the waves, and the storms. He was a powerful and often angry god. Polyphemus prayed to his father, asking him to curse Odysseus, to ensure he never reached home, or if he did, that he would suffer greatly, lose all his men, and return to find trouble in his house. Poseidon heard his son's plea, and from that moment, Odysseus had earned the wrath of a god. The journey home would now be even more impossible. After escaping the blinded Cyclops and incurring the wrath of Poseidon, Odysseus and his remaining men sailed onward, their hearts heavy with loss and fear. The sea god's anger made their journey even more difficult. They faced many dangers, but eventually their ships reached a new land. This was the island of Aea, home to the powerful sorceress Circe. The island seemed beautiful, with lush forests and clear streams. Odysseus sent a small group of his men to explore. They soon found a large stone house in a clearing. Around it, wild animals like lions and wolves roamed, but they acted strangely, like tame pets. From inside the house, they heard the sound of a woman singing sweetly as she wove at her loom. The men, unsuspecting, called out to her. Circe welcomed them inside, offering them a meal of cheese, honey, meal, and wine. But she had mixed a powerful drug into their food. As soon as they ate, she struck them with her magic wand. In an instant, the men changed. They grew snouts, bristles, and tails. They became pigs, though their minds remained human. Circe herded them into pens, giving them acorns to eat. Only one man, Eurylochus, had been cautious. He stayed outside and watched in horror as his comrades were transformed. He ran back to the ships, weeping, to tell Odysseus what had happened. Odysseus, filled with resolve, took his sword and bow and set off to rescue his men. As he walked through the forest, a young man appeared before him. This was Hermes, the messenger god, sent by Zeus. Hermes told Odysseus about Circe's magic and warned him that he too would be turned into a pig. But Hermes offered help. He gave Odysseus a small, white-flowered plant with a black root called moly. He said this magical herb would protect Odysseus from Circe's spells. Hermes also told him exactly what to do. When Circe struck him with her wand, Odysseus must rush her with his sword, as if to kill her. This would make her afraid and force her to break her spell. Odysseus listened carefully. He took the moly and continued to Circe's house. She welcomed him just as she had his men and offered him the drugged food. Odysseus ate it, and when she struck him with her wand, saying, "Go join your friends in the pigsty," her magic had no effect. Odysseus immediately drew his sword and rushed at her. Circe cried out in fear. She dropped her wand and fell to her knees, begging him to stop. Odysseus made her swear an oath that she would do him no harm and would release his men. She agreed, and then led him to the pigsties. She rubbed a different ointment on the pigs, and one by one they changed back into men. They were overjoyed to be human again, and even looked younger and stronger than before. Odysseus and his men stayed on Circe's island for a full year. They lived in comfort, feasting and enjoying her hospitality. But as the months passed, Odysseus began to feel a deep longing for his home, Ithaca. His men also urged him to remember their journey. Finally, Odysseus went to Circe and asked for her help in returning home. Circe agreed to help, but she told him he had to make one more perilous journey first. He needed to travel to the underworld, the house of Hades, the land of the dead. There, he had to consult the spirit of the blind prophet Tiresias, who would tell him how to get home. Odysseus and his men prepared for this grim voyage. Circe gave them instructions on how to reach the underworld and what sacrifices to make to draw forth the spirits of the dead. They sailed to the edge of the world, where the sun never shone. They reached a dark, misty land. Following Circe's directions, Odysseus dug a trench and poured offerings into it: milk, honey, wine, water, and barley meal. Then he sacrificed a ram and a black ewe, letting their blood fill the trench. The spirits of the dead began to rise, drawn by the blood. Many ghosts appeared, young and old, men and women. Odysseus had to keep them away from the blood until Tiresias arrived. the first spirit he spoke to was Elpenor, one of his own men, who had died on Circe's island after falling from her roof in a drunken stupor. Elpenor begged Odysseus to return to Aea and give his body a proper burial, so his spirit could rest. Then Odysseus saw the ghost of his own mother, Anticlea. He was shocked, as he had not known she was dead. She told him she had died of grief, longing for his return. He saw other famous heroes, the mighty Achilles, who told Odysseus he would rather be a living slave than a king among the dead. He also saw King Agamemnon, who warned Odysseus about the dangers of returning home, telling him how he himself had been murdered by his wife and her lover upon his own return from Troy. Finally, the blind prophet Tiresias appeared, holding a golden staff. He drank the blood and then spoke his prophecy. He warned Odysseus not to harm the sacred cattle of the sun god Helios when they reached his island, or disaster would strike. He also spoke of the troubles awaiting Odysseus in Ithaca, with arrogant suitors trying to marry his wife and take over his kingdom. Tiresias told him that after he dealt with these problems, Odysseus would have one more journey to make, carrying an oar far inland until he met people who knew nothing of the sea. There, he would offer sacrifices to Poseidon, and then, in old age, a peaceful death would come to him from the sea itself. With this crucial guidance, Odysseus prepared to leave the land of the dead, carrying the heavy weight of Tiresias's words. After consulting the prophet Tiresias in the land of the dead, Odysseus returned to Circe's island. He and his men buried their fallen comrade, Elpenor, as promised. Circe gave Odysseus more crucial advice for the dangers that still lay ahead on their journey home. She warned him about the Sirens, Scylla, and Charybdis. First, they faced the Sirens. These were creatures with the bodies of birds and the heads of women. They lived on a rocky island and sang songs so beautiful that no sailor could resist them. Any ship that came near would crash on the rocks, and the men would die. Circe had told Odysseus how to pass them safely. Odysseus plugged the ears of all his men with soft beeswax, so they could not hear the song. But Odysseus himself wanted to hear the sirens' voices. So he ordered his men to tie him tightly to the ship's mast. He told them to bind him even tighter if he begged to be set free. As their ship sailed closer, the Sirens began to sing. Their voices were enchanting, promising wisdom and knowledge. Odysseus struggled against his ropes, shouting for his men to release him. But his loyal crew, with their ears blocked, only pulled the ropes tighter. They rowed with all their strength until the ship was far past the island. Only then did they untie Odysseus and remove the beeswax from their ears. Next, they approached a narrow strait, a dangerous passage between two terrible monsters, Scylla and Charybdis. Scylla was a horrifying beast with 6 heads, each on a long, snaking neck. Her body was hidden in a cave high on a cliff. Charybdis was a giant whirlpool that swallowed the sea 3 times a day and then spat it out again. No ship could pass through without facing one of them. Circe had advised Odysseus to steer closer to Scylla. Losing 6 men was better than losing the entire ship and crew to Charybdis. Odysseus steered his ship as close as he could to Scylla's cliff. He watched the terrifying whirlpool of Charybdis on the other side. As they passed, Scylla's monstrous heads shot out from her cave. Each head snatched one of Odysseus's men from the deck. The men screamed as they were pulled upward, helpless, to their deaths. It was a terrible sight, the most painful Odysseus had ever witnessed on his journeys. With heavy hearts, the remaining crew continued their voyage. They soon reached Thrinacia, the island where Helios, the sun god, kept his sacred cattle. Circe and Tiresias had both warned Odysseus not to harm these animals. They were immortal and belonged to the gods. Odysseus made his men swear a solemn oath that they would not touch the cattle, no matter how hungry they became. However, a fierce storm kept them stranded on the island for a full month. Their food supplies ran out. The men grew desperately hungry. One day, while Odysseus slept, exhausted from praying to the gods, his men broke their oath. Led by Eurylochus, they decided that dying from hunger was worse than facing the gods' wrath. They killed some of the sacred cattle and roasted them over a fire. The smell of the cooking meat woke Odysseus, and he was filled with despair when he saw what they had done. Helios, the sun god, was furious. He went to Zeus and demanded justice. If he did not get it, he threatened to take his sun and shine it only in the underworld. Zeus promised to punish the men. When the storm finally passed and Odysseus's ship set sail again, Zeus sent a powerful lightning bolt. It struck the ship, tearing it apart. All of Odysseus's men were thrown into the churning water and drowned. Odysseus was the sole survivor. He clung to a piece of the wreckage for 9 long days, tossed by the waves. Finally, the sea carried him to Ithaca, a remote island. This was the home of the nymph Calypso, a beautiful goddess with flowing hair. Calypso found Odysseus washed ashore and took him in. She fell deeply in love with him and kept him on her island for 7 years. Calypso offered Odysseus comfort and even immortality. But despite the beauty of the island and her love, Odysseus was miserable. Every day he sat on the shore, staring out at the sea, weeping for his home and his family. His heart ached with a profound longing for Ithaca, his wife Penelope, and his son Telemachus. Meanwhile, on Mount Olympus, the goddess Athena took pity on Odysseus. She pleaded with Zeus to order Calypso to release him. Zeus agreed and sent his messenger, Hermes, to Ithaca. Hermes delivered Zeus's command to Calypso. She was heartbroken and angry, but she knew she could not disobey Zeus. Reluctantly, Calypso agreed to let Odysseus go. She helped him build a strong raft, gave him provisions, and showed him how to navigate by the stars. At last, after 7 years of captivity, Odysseus set sail once more, his heart filled with a renewed, fragile hope for home. Odysseus left Calypso's island on a sturdy raft, built with the goddess's help. He sailed for 17 days across the wide, open sea, guiding his raft by the stars. His heart held a fragile hope for home, but his long journey was far from over. Poseidon, the god of the sea, still held a grudge against Odysseus for blinding his son Polyphemus. As Odysseus sailed, Poseidon saw him. The sea god grew furious. He sent a terrible storm. Dark clouds gathered, and huge waves crashed down on the small raft. The wind howled, tearing the sails. Odysseus was tossed about like a toy. The mast snapped, and the raft began to break apart. Odysseus was thrown into the churning water, struggling to stay afloat. He thought his end had come. He battled the waves for 2 days and 2 nights, clinging to a piece of his broken raft. Exhausted and near death, he finally saw land. He he swam with his last bit of strength towards the shore. The waves smashed him against the rocky coast. He nearly drowned again, but with a final push, he crawled onto the sand. He was naked and covered in sea salt, utterly spent. He collapsed under some olive bushes, burying himself in leaves to keep warm, and fell into a deep, desperate sleep. This land was Scheria, the beautiful home of the Phaeacians. The next morning, Princess Nausicaa, the daughter of King Alcinous, came to the shore with her maidens to wash clothes. As they played a ball game, their laughter woke Odysseus. He emerged from the bushes, a wild and frightening figure. But Nausicaa, brave and kind, showed him compassion. She gave him clothes, food, and directed him to her father's palace. Odysseus walked to the grand palace of King Alcinous and Queen Arete. He found them feasting with their court. He knelt before the queen. The Phaeacians, known for their great hospitality, welcomed him warmly, even though they did not know who he was. They gave him a comfortable chair, fine food, and fresh clothes. They honored him with games and a great feast. During the feast, a blind bard named Demodocus sang songs of heroes and battles. He sang of the Trojan War and the Trojan horse, a tale that brought tears to Odysseus's eyes. He wept quietly, hiding his face. King Alcinous noticed his guest's sorrow. He asked the stranger to reveal his true identity and tell his story. It was then that Odysseus finally spoke his name. I am Odysseus, son of Laertes, known for all my wiles. He then began to tell the Phaeacians the entire story of his 10-year journey, all the adventures and misfortunes that had befallen him since he left Troy. This long recounting of his travels makes up the very heart of the tale of the Odyssey. The Phaeacians listened with wonder to his amazing story. They were moved by his suffering and admired his courage. They were master sailors, and King Alcinous readily agreed to help him. They prepared a magnificent ship, swift and silent, to take him home. That night, Odysseus boarded the Phaeacian ship. He lay down on a soft blanket and fell into a deep, peaceful sleep, a sleep like death or a pleasant dream. The ship sped across the waves, faster than a falcon, carrying him swiftly towards his homeland. Before sunrise, the ship reached Ithaca. The Phaeacian sailors gently lifted the sleeping Odysseus from the ship and placed him on his native soil near a cave. They laid out his gifts beside him and then sailed away. After 20 long years, the longest part of his journey was finally over. He was home. Odysseus woke up on the shores of Ithaca. The morning light filtered through the trees. He had been away for 20 years. He looked around, but did not know this place. His mind felt hazy from the long journey and the deep sleep. He thought he was still in some foreign land. Then a young woman appeared. She was tall and beautiful. She was the goddess Athena, his protector. Athena smiled. She told him he was finally home in Ithaca. She warned him that his palace was full of wicked men, suitors who wanted to marry his wife, Penelope, and take his kingdom. Athena touched him. In an instant, his body changed. His skin grew wrinkled, his hair turned gray and thin. He looked like an old, ragged beggar. This disguise would keep him safe while he planned his revenge. Athena, his constant helper, would guide him. Odysseus, now looking like an old wanderer, went to find his loyal swineherd, Eumaeus. Eumaeus lived in a simple hut in the countryside. He welcomed the stranger with kindness, offering food and a place to rest. He did not know this old man was his master. Odysseus stayed with Eumaeus, gathering information about the suitors and the state of his home. Soon Odysseus's son, Telemachus, returned to Ithaca. Telemachus had been on a journey, searching for news of his father. Athena had guided him back to Eumaeus's hut. Inside the hut, Athena gave Odysseus a sign. Odysseus stepped aside, and for a brief moment his beggar's disguise fell away. Telemachus saw his father, strong and noble, just as he remembered. Tears flowed freely as father and son embraced after so many years. They spoke of the suitors and planned their attack. Odysseus then went to his own palace, still disguised as the old beggar. As he approached the gates, he saw an old dog lying in a pile of dung. It was Argus, his hunting dog from long ago. Argus was weak and neglected. But when he heard Odysseus's voice and caught his scent, the old dog thumped his tail once. He struggled to lift his head, then closed his eyes and died. He had waited 20 years for his master's return. Inside the palace, the suitors were feasting. They were rude and cruel. They mocked the old beggar, throwing bones and insults at him. Even some of the palace servants, who had grown disloyal, treated him poorly. Odysseus endured their abuse, watching and waiting. He met his wife, Penelope. She was still beautiful, but worn with grief. She showed the beggar a cautious kindness. She asked him about his travels, hoping for any news of her lost husband. Odysseus spoke carefully, revealing nothing. Later, Penelope asked her old nurse, Eurycleia, to wash the beggar's feet. Eurycleia brought a basin of warm water. As she began to wash his feet, her hand brushed against a scar on his thigh. It was a long, jagged scar from a boar hunt in his youth. Eurycleia remembered it instantly. Her eyes widened in shock, and a gasp escaped her lips. She recognized her master. Odysseus quickly grabbed her, putting his hand over her mouth. He looked into her eyes, silently pleading with her to keep his secret. Eurycleia understood. His plan depended on his disguise remaining hidden. Penelope, weary from years of waiting and the constant pressure from the suitors, finally decided on a contest. She would marry the man who could string Odysseus's great bow, and then shoot an arrow clean through the holes of 12 axe heads lined up in a row. This was a feat only her husband, Odysseus, had ever been able to do. The bow itself was a massive piece of weaponry, stiff and unyielding, made for a man of immense strength. One by one, the proud suitors tried their hand. Each man struggled. They strained and sweated, their faces red with effort, but none could even bend the mighty bow enough to string it. They grumbled and complained, feeling humiliated by their failure. Then the old beggar, Odysseus in disguise, asked if he might try. The suitors laughed loudly, mocking him. They told him to sit down, that such a task was far beyond an old man. But Telemachus, knowing his father's true identity, insisted the beggar be given a chance. Odysseus took the bow in his hands. He inspected it carefully, turning it over. Then, with an easy grace, as if he were stringing a lyre, he strung the great bow. The sound it made was like a swallow's cry, clear and true. The suitors watched, stunned and silent. Odysseus then picked up an arrow. He drew back the string, aimed, and let fly. The arrow zipped through all 12 axe heads, striking the wall beyond with a soft thud. At that moment, Odysseus shed his disguise. He stood tall and strong, his true self revealed. The suitors gasped in terror. He looked at them with fierce eyes, then turned to Telemachus, who stood armed and ready beside him. Eumaeus, the swineherd, and Philodius, the loyal cowherd, also stood prepared, weapons in hand. A terrible battle began in the great hall. Arrows flew, striking the suitors down. Odysseus and Telemachus fought side by side, relentless and powerful. Athena, the goddess, appeared, her shield shimmering, lending her divine aid to Odysseus. The suitors, trapped and unprepared, fell one after another. The great hall became a scene of swift and brutal justice. After the massacre, Odysseus dealt with the disloyal maidservants. These women had sided with the suitors, betraying their king and queen. They were led out of the palace and hanged, receiving their harsh punishment. Still, Penelope could not fully believe her husband had returned. The years had taught her caution. She decided on one final test, a secret only she and Odysseus shared. She told her servants to move their marriage bed out of their room. Odysseus heard her and grew angry. He cried out that no man could move their bed. He explained that he had built it himself, carving it from the trunk of a living olive tree that grew through the floor of their chamber. He described every detail, how he had built their room around that tree, how one of its posts was the olive tree itself, still rooted in the earth. Penelope listened to his passionate words. This was the secret, the proof she needed. Tears streamed down her face as she rushed to him. She threw her arms around him, holding him close after 20 long years. Their reunion was filled with deep emotion and relief, the true end of Odysseus's epic journey. Later, with the help of Athena and Zeus, peace was restored to Ithaca. The families of the slain suitors were reconciled, and Odysseus once again ruled his kingdom. Now, as our story of Odysseus and his long journey home comes to a close, it is time for you to find your own rest. Let us take a moment to gently prepare your body and mind for sleep. Begin by bringing your awareness to your toes. Feel them resting, perhaps wiggling them just slightly, and then let them become still. Notice any sensation there, any slight tension, and then simply let it go. Allow your toes to become soft and heavy. Next, move your attention to your feet. Feel them resting against the bed or floor. Allow any tightness in your arches or heels to melt away. Let your feet become deeply relaxed and heavy. Slowly bring your awareness up to your ankles. Notice how they feel, then let them soften. Move up through your calves. Feel the muscles in your lower legs. With each breath out, let them release any stored tension. Allow your calves to become heavier and more relaxed. Continue this gentle journey upwards to your knees. Feel them soften and release. Then move to your thighs. These large muscles hold much of our body's weight. Encourage them to let go, to become loose and heavy. Bring your attention now to your hips. This area can often hold tension. Allow your hips to spread and settle, feeling the support beneath you. Let them become very heavy, sinking down. Now let your awareness move to your abdomen. Feel your stomach rise and fall gently with each breath. Let the muscles in your belly soften. Feel your chest. Let it expand easily with your breath, then soften as you breathe out. Allow your chest to feel open and calm. Move to your back. Feel the length of your spine from your lower back all the way up to your shoulders. Let your back muscles relax deeply. Feel your shoulders drop away from your ears, becoming loose and heavy. Let this feeling of relaxation flow down your arms, through your elbows, forearms, and wrists, all the way to your hands. Feel your hands resting, perhaps with your fingers gently curled. Let them become soft and completely still. Finally, bring your awareness to your neck. Let any stiffness here release. Feel your jaw soften, your tongue rest gently in your mouth. Let the muscles around your eyes relax. Smooth out your forehead. Allow your entire face and head to become calm and heavy. Your whole body is now soft and heavy, sinking comfortably into your resting place. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Stories for Sleepless Nights, and that it helped you find rest and get away from your thoughts. If you would like to listen to a story about a particular topic, please share your ideas in the comments. This is Luna, and I hope to join you again soon. Good night.